Deep in the heart of North Carolina's Blue Ridge Mountains, another mountain man is forging ahead.
For over 40 years, a man lived alone in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, wearing animal skins, riding horses, and teaching thousands of people how to survive in the wild.
Basically, we have two big triangles, a matched pair. And so your boat would suspend right here from a cross member.
The whole world believed they knew exactly who Eustace Conway was, but beneath 1,000 acres of ancient forest, buried under rock that is over 1 billion years old, something was hiding. And when the worst storm in a century ripped open the earth, it revealed a secret so disturbing that it changed everything we thought we knew about the legendary mountain man. The last American man. Before we get to what was found underground, you need to understand who Eustace Conway really is and why he chose to live on this specific piece of land. Because once you know his story, the discovery beneath his property becomes 10 times more terrifying. Eustace Robinson Conway IV was born on September 15, 1961, in Columbia, South Carolina. His grandfather, Chief Johnson, founded one of the first wilderness camps in American history near Weaverville, North Carolina, back in the 1920s. Conway grew up in Gastonia in what he later called pseudo-suburbia. But even as a child, he was different from everyone around him. By 12, he disappeared into the Appalachian Mountains alone for a full week, surviving entirely off the land with nothing but a blade and his instincts. At 17 years old, he walked away from suburban life and never came back. He moved into a handmade tipi in the woods and lived there for 17 consecutive winters, wearing clothes he sewed from the hides of animals he hunted. He attended Appalachian State University, dressed in full buckskin, cooking squirrels over an open fire right on campus and writing his term papers by candlelight, while other students had dorm rooms and electric lamps. He graduated with dual degrees in anthropology and English and was named the most outstanding senior in his department. In 1987, Conway purchased 107 acres of pristine wilderness in the triplet community of Watauga County, near Boone, North Carolina. He named it Turtle Island Preserve. Over the next 3 decades, he expanded it to 1,000 acres, building 9 handcrafted log structures using only materials from the land itself. Elizabeth Gilbert wrote about him in her 2002 book, The Last American Man, which became a finalist for the National Book Award. The History Channel made him a star on Mountain Men, which has aired for over 12 seasons. Conway once said, "I live in nature where everything is connected and circular. I do not want to live in a dead place." Eustace Conway had been hiding something enormous, and it took one of the most catastrophic natural disasters in American history to finally reveal it. The storm that revealed everything. On September 26, 2024, Hurricane Helene made landfall in Florida as a Category 4 storm with 140-mile-per-hour winds.
Category 4 Hurricane Helene powering its way ashore on Florida's iconic Big Bend region.
Violent winds up to 100 miles per hour slamming into Florida.
It was the strongest hurricane on record to hit that region of Florida, but the true nightmare began when the storm pushed hundreds of miles inland and slammed into the mountains of western North Carolina. What made Helene so catastrophic was timing. A stalled cold front had already dumped 10 to 15 inches of rain across the Blue Ridge in the days before the hurricane arrived. The ancient soil was completely saturated down to the bedrock before Helene even showed up. Then, the main storm dropped another 20 inches on top of it. Boone received over 20 inches of total rainfall. The nearby town of Seven Devils recorded 21.6 inches. Meteorologists measured 1.5 times more atmospheric moisture than any previously recorded event in the region. The Watauga River at Sugar Grove crested at 29.5 feet above its normal 6-foot flood stage. It was not a 100-year flood. It was a 1,000-year flood. The destruction was apocalyptic. The death toll in North Carolina reached 108 confirmed fatalities. Over 2,200 landslides were documented across the mountains by the United States Geological Survey. Downtown Boone was completely submerged. A massive sinkhole opened beneath the historic Legends building. Appalachian State University shut down for weeks. Every single road in western North Carolina was declared closed. The ground that had been solid and stable for centuries was torn apart in a matter of hours. It was during this chaos that something was discovered at Turtle Island Preserve. Caretakers were walking the property lines, checking for washouts and flood damage, when a young volunteer named Caleb stumbled into a depression in the earth near the far edge of the property. It was well away from any of the main cabins, deep in the forest where visitors rarely went. But this was not a natural sinkhole. It was almost a perfect circle, about 5 feet across, with edges that were too uniform, too deliberate to be the work of water and gravity alone. As Caleb and the others cleared the mud with their shovels, they hit something hard. Not rock, metal. After hours of digging in the rain, they uncovered an old iron hatch buried under decades of clay, roots, and forest debris. The hatch was nearly fossilized by time, but the markings carved into its rusted surface were unmistakable. They were the same symbols that Eustace Conway carved into his tools, his cabin walls, and his horse saddles. This was his work. He had built this hatch and buried it himself, and he had hidden it so carefully that it took the worst storm in a century to expose it. When the team finally pried the hatch open with crowbars, a deep gust of musty air rushed out from the darkness below, carrying the scent of earth that had not been disturbed in years. Descent into the labyrinth. Beneath the hatch, a wooden ladder descended into pitch-black darkness. The rungs were worn smooth by years of use, yet they were remarkably solid, as if someone had been maintaining them in secret. The team climbed down one by one. At the bottom, roughly 15 feet below the surface, they found themselves standing in a narrow tunnel. This was not a natural cave. The walls were reinforced with precisely cut logs, each one notched together using a dovetail joint. This was the exact construction technique that Eustace taught his students on the surface at Turtle Island. To understand why this was even possible, you need to know what lies beneath Watauga County. The bedrock here belongs to the Ash Metamorphic Suite, a formation of gneiss, schist, and amphibolite that dates back 1.0 to 1.3 billion years. Boone sits at 3,333 feet, the highest town of its size east of the Mississippi River. The soil is classified as the Watauga series, deep and well-drained, formed from ancient mica gneiss and mica schist, with porosity between 20 and 40%. The first section of the tunnel was clearly designed for storage. Shelves carved into the dirt walls were lined with hundreds of glass jars sealed with wax. Preserved beans, dried meats, rendered animal fats, strange herbs, powders, and animal bones were all neatly organized and labeled. Old lanterns sat on wooden barrels coated in decades of dust. The deeper the team went, the stranger everything became. Locals in the triplet community had always noticed how Eustace would disappear for hours, sometimes entire days at a time. He would head into the deep woods carrying tools and supplies, and return covered in mud with a quiet, private expression on his face. Everyone assumed he was meditating or seeking solitude in nature, but now the truth was painfully obvious. He was not meditating, he was digging. He had spent decades building this massive underground network in total secrecy, and nobody had the slightest idea. As the team turned the first corner, the tunnel branched in multiple directions and plunged even deeper into the mountain. This was not just a tunnel, it was a labyrinth. The underground world. The main passage opened into a chamber nearly 20 feet across, supported by thick timber beams. A crude workbench sat against one wall, covered with chisels, leather-working tools, and rusted tins of hand-forged nails. Nearby, they found an old handcart sitting on a set of wooden rails with a pulley system fixed to the ceiling. It was an ingenious system designed for hauling tons of soil and rock to the surface without being detected. Eustace had moved thousands of pounds of earth through these tunnels over the course of decades without anyone noticing. Then they found the symbols. Carved into the support beams throughout the tunnels were markings that matched Appalachian folk traditions dating back centuries. In the mountains of Appalachia, protective symbols have been carved into homes and structures for generations. The hexafoil, a 6-petaled flower drawn within a circle, was placed on doors and lintels to ward off evil spirits. Marian marks, 2 intertwined V-shapes, invoked the protection of the Virgin Mary. Iron nails were driven beside doorways because mountain people believed dark spirits could not cross iron. These were not decorations, they were wards. Eustace had carved them obsessively throughout his tunnels, as if he was trying to protect himself from something below. After another 100 yards, the team entered a vast natural chamber that Eustace had incorporated into his tunnel system. In the center sat a large flat stone slab surrounded by melted candles, bundles of dried sage, and pieces of animal bone arranged in precise geometric patterns. The walls were covered in charcoal drawings of mountains, trees, rivers, and human figures intertwined with roots as if being pulled into the earth. This was not a workshop, it was a shrine. The Cherokee people who inhabited these mountains for thousands of years believed that immortal spirit beings called the Nuna-He kept townhouses inside the mountains themselves. The rumbling heard from certain peaks was considered evidence of these spirits drumming and dancing within the rock. In Cherokee cosmology, the Earth is a great island floating in water, suspended from the sky vault by 4 cords at the cardinal directions. The mountains are not just geography, they are alive. But the most unsettling discovery was on the far side of the chamber, hidden behind a stack of rotting deer hides. A heavy, steel-reinforced door was set into a wall of poured concrete. Eustace Conway built exclusively with wood and stone. He did not work with concrete and steel. Scratched into the concrete surface while it was still wet was a single line: "The deeper you go, the more truth you find." He did not build this part, he found it. The Cold War Ghost. During the 1950s and 1960s, the United States government constructed roughly 90 secret underground facilities across the Appalachian Mountains within a 300-mile radius of Washington, D.C. This network was called the Federal Relocation Arc, designed to preserve the government in the event of nuclear war. Mount Weather in Virginia contains 200,000 square feet of underground offices. The Greenbrier Bunker in West Virginia held complete House and Senate chambers behind a blast door weighing 28 tons, maintained for 31 years by a dummy company before a Washington Post reporter exposed it in 1992. In Chatham County, North Carolina, AT&T built a facility called the Big Hole, a bunker 7 to 13 stories deep with walls sheathed in copper to deflect electromagnetic pulse. Just hours from Boone, the NSA operated a classified listening station in the Pisgah National Forest surrounded by armed guards. The Appalachian Mountains were full of Cold War secrets. Many have never been fully accounted for. The team pried open the steel door. Beyond it, the tunnel walls changed from hand-hewn timber to smooth, cold concrete. Rusted steel I-beams replaced wooden supports. Corroded wiring and pipes lined the floor. Among the debris, they found a rusted ammunition crate stamped with the letters U.S., Department of Interior, and a date, 1964. Eustace Conway was only 3 years old when this facility was built. He did not purchase Turtle Island until 1987. This bunker was here long before him, built by a government that had come looking for something inside this mountain. They found crates of military-grade gas masks, old flashlights, and emergency rations wrapped in oilcloth, all dated from the 1960s. The man who rejected modern society had been living directly on top of its most paranoid secret. Then they found one final sealed doorway, but this one was different. It had been walled off with bags of poured concrete, and the tool marks in the dried surface were recent. They matched the tools from Eustace's workshop on the surface. He had not just discovered the bunker, he had found something deeper inside it, and he had spent years of his life trying to wall it shut. Breaking the seal. It took hours of work with pickaxes and sledgehammers to break through. The air grew thick with dust, and with every swing of the hammer, the feeling of wrongness grew heavier. When the concrete finally gave way, the air that escaped from the other side was foul. It smelled like old copper and ozone. Their flashlights revealed something impossible. It was not another concrete room. It was a natural cavern, and the bunker had been built specifically to reach it. The walls of the cavern were covered in a thick fungal growth that glowed with a faint, sickly green light. In the southern Appalachians, a real phenomenon called foxfire has been documented since Aristotle first described it in 382 BC. Species like Pinellus stypticus produce bioluminescence on decaying wood, emitting a bluish-green glow at 520 to 530 nanometers. Only eastern North American strains exhibit this trait. The chemistry was fully characterized in 2018 and involves a caffeic acid cycle that is the only genetically encodable bioluminescent system from eukaryotes ever identified. Glowing fungi once illuminated the compass of America's first submarine in 1775, and Mark Twain wrote about the phenomenon in Huckleberry Finn. But what was growing in this cavern was something else entirely. It covered the walls and ceiling in thick, pulsating sheets, and it moved with a slow, rhythmic pattern that felt almost like breathing. In the center of the cavern was a large dark pit. Stacked around it were arrowheads, broken pottery, animal pelts, and handmade tools that clearly predated European settlement by centuries. These were offerings, left over generations by the Cherokee and their ancestors, by people who understood that something lived down here and needed to be appeased. Near the pit, tied to a rock, was a wooden box sealed with wax. Inside was Eustace Conway's final letter, written in shaky, desperate handwriting. The Guardian's warning. The letter read, "If you have found this, then the mountain has chosen. You have broken the seal. What man tried to forget, the earth kept. The government found it in 64. They tried to study it. They fled. I found it. I tried to contain it. The whispers from the soil are not wisdom. They are hunger. Do not disturb what sleeps. The tunnels are alive, and they remember." Everything about Eustace Conway suddenly made terrible sense. He was not just a survivalist. He was a guardian. The government discovered something in this mountain during the Cold War, built a bunker to study it, and then abandoned the project when they realized what they were dealing with. Decades later, Eustace found it after purchasing the land, and instead of running, he stayed. He spent his entire life building tunnels, not as a monument to freedom, but as a labyrinth of containment around something ancient and wrong. In 2012, when Watauga County issued building code violations against Turtle Island and tried to shut it down, Conway fought back harder than anyone expected. He went before the North Carolina Building Code Council. He gathered over 10,000 petition signatures. He rallied students from Appalachian State University to march on government buildings. Governor Pat McCrory eventually signed a special law to protect his property. The whole world thought he was fighting for his way of life, but maybe he was fighting for something much bigger. Maybe he knew that if the government forced him off the land, there would be no one left to guard what was underneath it. His close friend, Preston Roberts, who worked alongside him at Turtle Island for over 30 years, died on July 24, 2017, at the age of 60, from a sudden inoperable liver tumor. He went from diagnosis to death in just 3 weeks. Conway buried him on the north side of Morning Watch Hill, near the Medicine Wheel on Turtle Mountain. Some people now wonder whether Preston knew about the tunnels too, whether he spent 3 decades helping Eustace guard the secret, and whether whatever lives beneath that mountain took something from him in the end. The largest single organism ever discovered on Earth is a honey mushroom colony in Oregon that covers 2,385 acres and weighs up to 35,000 tons, estimated to be between 2,400 and 8,650 years old. It spreads through soil via structures called rhizomorphs, growing up to 3 feet per year. Scientists call underground fungal networks the wood wide web. Every step you take through a forest crosses hundreds of kilometers of densely packed fungal threads carrying chemical signals between trees. The mountain beneath Turtle Island is alive. It has been alive for longer than human civilization has existed, and the team standing in that glowing cavern, breathing that foul air, reading the desperate words of a man who gave up everything to keep this secret buried, realized they had just broken the only seal that was keeping it contained, and there was no way to put it back. Was Eustace Conway a brave guardian who sacrificed his entire life to protect the world from something ancient and hungry? Or was he simply a troubled man who spent 40 years walling off a cave full of glowing mushrooms? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.